Hey people, it's me again. So, anyways, I'm just like taking a break from like my morning walk. So I have absolutely like no idea how far I walked, you know, as far as that goes. Maybe at least about a mile, maybe two, as far as that goes. But it was like a bitch to like walk up this hill, but I think it's kind of like worth it just to see like the sunrise and all this. But it's just one of those things that I think like might take for granted as far as that goes. But if I go like any higher up, if I look at it this sort of way, I could see like the ocean, somewhere around here. But it was like one of the reasons why I gotten so homesick back about like maybe about a little bit 12 years ago, as far as while I was living in Irving, as far as that goes. But anyway, it was one of those things that I say that it was just more of a sabbatical for me, rather than just that. And I think the truth is, I think I never really intended on to stay there permanently as far as that goes. And it was just me just wanting to experience what's like outside of my home and all that sort of stuff. Even though I wasn't necessarily by myself and all that. But mainly, the other reason was also like the political climate at the time, as far as that goes. And in a way, with like Bush kind of making his whole mission to ban marriage equality and all that, just to distract us from the war for Iraq and all this sort of stuff, just to pay his donors, for stealing the election and all this sort of stuff and blah 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 blah, that sort of thing. But mainly, I think at that whole point there, I think I was like cheated out of that sort of stuff there. And mainly, I was kind of like ashamed of my vote as far as in 2000. I did vote for Bush that year. But that was mainly because I just didn't care for Gore and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't really want to have Miss Let's Clean Up Everything Tipper Gore as First Lady and all that sort of stuff there. But the way how he kind of fucked everything up, I don't think we're going to really have a Republican for quite a while if this sort of thing keeps up, unless Republicans change their stances on marriage equality, as far as women's reproductive rights and immigration and all that kind of stuff there. And that they're just catering to those crashy old white men, all those untrue bunker types. I mean, they're not going to be around much longer. And in a way, the young conservative on that sort of stuff just doesn't see it as like a big issue as far as with marriage equality or women's reproductive rights, because they just think it's all big government. But I think that was like the whole reason why I kind of went that liberal as far as that goes. Even though maybe back when I was probably about like 16 or 17 around the time, I think I was a little bit conservative in a way. But I think part of it was like I might have been parroting that one bus driver's beliefs a little bit. His name was Frank at that time, but I don't think he I think as of now he probably has retired as far as that goes. But I remember that he had like a son, or it was like a daughter. I forgot what it was, but it was like, man, it is probably his son or daughter was like might have been like liberal as far as that goes, because that's usually the whole story goes with uh, with conservatives, like they would that their children end up becoming liberal as far as a form of rebellion and all of that. But then the opposite could be true there, because especially like with Family Ties, with how Alex Keaton was like conservative, but only just for the sake of rebelling against his liberal parents and all that sort of stuff. And I think that was like one of the reasons like why Reagan had won in '80 and all that. Not just like the Iran Contra affair, but it was also the fact that the Gen Xers were wanting to rebel against all this hippie love kind of thing that the baby boomers were experiencing at that time. And then I think it might have been like the baby boomers might have gotten a little bit conservative in some ways, because at that time, I mean, in '80, you know, mom was probably about like my age in a way, you know, you know, but in the other part of like the baby boomers, they were some of them were like in their mid to late 20s as far as that goes. Any of the ones that were born in like the late mid to the late 50s and all that, and then like the early Gen Xers were already like 20, 19, or 18. That was basically the case. And now I think it's like the millennials are, the first half of it is going to be like we're all going to turn 35 and turn like the 40 next in the next election, and then the next one. So that's just going to be one of those political shifts at this point. But anyways, besides like that, it's also meaning like the iGen, or whatever they call this current generation of kids. There's the ones that were like one of my cousin's age, where she's like 16, and now she's not even old enough to vote yet, but 2 more years she will be able to vote as far as that goes. But it's any like these other like kids that are like that old, that were like born in the 2000s and up until like now, that's basically the iGen. And I think that's probably like the cutoff point might be like at least 2 years from now, and then whatever the next generation that's going to happen at that point, because that was usually, as far as with the Strauss how generation theory goes, it's like there's like when one generation comes of age, then there's like another dynamic shift comes, and then another generation approaches like midlife, another one approaches elder years and all this sort of stuff, and then there's another generation that's born and all that, and they kind of fit into like these different archetypes and all that sort of stuff. But I don't really remember exactly what was like the archetypes as far as for each of the generations, but all I know is like my generation, like the millennials. I think I still count as a millennial in a way, but as far as that goes, it's like we're like the same thing as like the GI generation as far as that goes. That generation that was like, they were like born like, I think they were born like in that whole point of like after World War One and like the Roaring Twenties and all this sort of stuff, and then it was like their coming of age was the Depression, WW2, and then it was like midlife was the whole post-war America, that sort of stuff was midlife for them, and then it was like elder years was like the counterculture, that kind of thing that was happening in the 60s and the 70s. you know. And then like for the other generation, there was like I mean, there was supposed to be like the silent generation. It was like their childhood was like Depression and World War II and all that sort of stuff. And then it was like coming of age as far as post-war America. Midlife was basically the the culture clash in the '60s, and then it's like outer years and the '80s kind of. Uh, I forgot what they called like the '80s thing that they usually call it, like the '80s and the '90s kind of stuff. That was kind of like the unraveling period or whatever they call it, because it goes like high, high awakening, unraveling, crisis, or something like that. And then it was like the the high period was post-war America. Then the awakening period was the '60s and '70s counterculture and all that. Then it was like the '80s and '90s counter revolution, that sort of thing that they had was like the unraveling. And then what we're in now is like the whole crisis period, just like what happened like in the Great Depression and and then World War II, I think. But it seemed like that it the the period's like every like 20 years or roughly that sort of thing, you know. But it was like mainly it was like people had said like it's just some sort of like seasonic cycle of things, like it's like spring, summer, fall, winter, and then it just goes all over again. And like this is kind of like a winter, and then we go back to a spring, then to a summer, then to a fall, and it doesn't really end, because after all, it's like there's like another generation that comes in, takes on that role that the other generation that has dropped off as far as that goes. So it's like the next generation of people is going to be like the baby boomers, any of the ones that are born in the 2020s to the 2040s. And then the 2040s to the 2060s would be like anybody who's going to be like the Gen Xers. And then any of the ones that are like the 2060s to the 2080s, it's like my generation. And then so on and so forth, you know. So it's just gonna be weird how things are gonna be in another few more years and all that sort of stuff, you know. So, anyways, I guess it's like time for me to get back home and all that sort of stuff, you know. But I'll talk to you guys later. So, okay, bye.